Hi, you're listening to After Dinner Conversations, short stories for long discussions. What that means is we get short stories, we select those short stories, and then we discuss them specifically about the ethics and the morality of the choices the characters and the situations put us in. Why did you do this? What makes you do this? What makes us good people? What's the nature of truth, goodness, all of that sort of stuff. And hopefully we're all better, smarter people for it and learn a little bit about why we think the way we think. So thank you for listening. Welcome back to After Dinner Conversations, short stories for long discussions, where we take short stories, we publish them, and then we discuss them here. We are in season 5. We've been doing this for like 2 years now. Yeah, we're in the 60s now for our episodes, I think. And today, I am your co-host Kolby here with Ashley.
Hello.
And Jeremy.
Hi.
There you go. I did it right this time.
Yeah, good job.
You can check out all of our stories on afterdinnerconversation.com. You can support us on Patreon. You can buy them on Amazon if you're an Amazon user and you've got a Kindle or whatever else. But they're everywhere. Just type in After Dinner Conversation. So the story this week is Bugs in the Valley by Saba Waheed. And it's a longer story. It's sort of the opposite of the story we had last time. That was like a short little thing. So I'm going to do my best to remember it. But if I forget anything, like interrupt me, because this is a little bit more of a one. It's also an October magazine from 2021, so you can always go read it. Okay, so I'm just going to... I don't remember names.
Do you want me to do it? Because I just read it, or do you want to... You're good. Here's her name.
Amaya.
There you go.
That's all good. So I'm just going to go with it. I'm gonna roll this.
Roll it.
A dude meets this lady in the bar and is like, hey, we were friends in school, and you were trying to fix... what was it? Nature.
Right.
And he's like, how's that going? And she's like, I can't talk about it. He's like, oh, it's going. And so he's a marketing guy. She's a scientist lady. He does a little bit of research. And it turns out he's at the top of his game and she's at the top of her game. And so she invites him to a meeting and says basically like, from what I've heard, I want you to be in our team. And I can't tell you what our team is. Until you say yes, because it's that top secret. He agrees and finds out that she is working on nanobots that go into your body to basically, she describes it as little fish that eat the dead skin off your feet if you're like in Southeast Asia or whatever. And she says that's what the nanobots do. They eat the dead cells and so that you're healthy. She's like...
But specifically cancer cells.
Yeah, she's specifically doing it for cancer because her parents both died of cancer, I think, when they were in school. And, but your body rejects these nano things unless they can mask them by using a type of flower, which is called like a corpse flower.
Corpse flower,
right?
Which is very rare.
Which is very rare and very hard to grow, and you can't grow it in large quantities. And so they get, with his help, they get approval to start doing testing on people, and it works perfectly, and everything's great. And she's continuing to work on a way to replicate the properties of the corpse flower so they can mass produce it. And also the side effect that they find out later is not only does it attack cancer cells, but it attacks all of the cells that are aging and going in your body. And so what it essentially means is that you never get sick, you never age, you never get achy bones or muscles. You can still get hit by a bus, but you're not going to like degenerate with age.
And the bugs last about 10 years,
That's
they said.
Yeah.
So say you have cancer and terminal illness, it's going to give you at least another 10 years of your life. Hence, they want to use it for medicinal purposes. That was the goal. Like, give people some extra life.
Right. And
because then the bugs die out themselves. Right. And then, of course, you start to age again or the cancer comes back.
And that is by design because they're worried that if the bugs don't have a termination date, that they'll continue to self-replicate forever. And then they'll just like take over the world or something.
Or take over your system.
Take over your system, right. They'll eat your whole system up eventually. So they have to program them to eventually die. And so after years of trying to... Oh, and they end up hooking up. They have a kid. They fall in love. They get married, blah, blah, blah.
Don't get married, I don't think.
Oh, they get married? Okay. Okay, they have a kid. And over time, she continues to work on replicating this corpse flower so they can mass produce this. And eventually the investors get mad and are like, look, we can't make money selling this. And like, doing experiments with cancer patients in
We need
small
to market
quantities.
it.
We need money. We need funding because we're losing money. And so the solution that they do is to bring in billionaires and give them the shot, even though they're not sick, in exchange for them being like heavy hitter investors in this.
Like feel what it's like to not be aging, like to feel healthy.
Right. And then when she finds out that they're doing this, that causes a rift in the relationship and they break up. He is now on these bugs as well. So he's not aging anymore. She is. There's an accident. She finally figures out how to do this, how to replicate the corpse flower. And right around that time, there's an accident in her lab, and her half of the lab where she's doing that research along with her blows up. The corporation tells him that she was trying to blow up the whole lab because she was so upset with us trying to market this to rich people.
I think also she was on the cusp of, in his opinion, she had actually found the solution to replicate it.
Right.
But rather than anyone else get the information, she decides to blow herself up in the lab and take down all of the research with her.
Everything, right.
Yeah.
Right.
But she was stopped by an assistant, so she only blew up her research, not the sort of corpse flower way to make it. Mm-hmm. And so then everyone gets older. The daughter gets older. He gets older. The daughter becomes a sort of an eco-friendly person. She eventually dies of old age. And then when he's at her funeral, the daughter's funeral now, because he's still young. One of the people that's at the funeral that's part of the resistance says, hey, you know that she was working against what you were doing. He goes, yeah, I know, but I loved her anyway. And they're like, no, the mom, your not wife.
Right.
She was actually
about to hand over to us.
Right.
And
so that everyone could have the way to make it infinitely as many as they wanted. And the corporation blew her up.
To create scarcity.
Right.
Right. And frame her.
But we never really know if that's true or not. And then the guy's like, yeah, I've had enough of life. I'm ready to die. All right. I feel like that was a lot of plot. But I think, did I get everything? Did I miss anything?
All the important stuff.
Right. Okay.
He grows because he's doing what he's doing and becomes really important. The Jeff Bezos or...
That's right. Yeah, he does. He becomes like the big guy for like medical tech and all that.
Lots of tech.
And they talk about how since it is in limited supply, that they have to decide how to share it, the limited amount they have. And they share it with world leaders. They use it as a mechanism to encourage world peace.
Also, if there were protesters, they would find the protest leaders and say, hey, try this out. And of course, the protest leaders felt amazing. So of course, they weren't against the product anymore. Right. So they had a way to quell any uprising against what they were doing.
And I think one of the things they also did just to sort of put unrest of this was, when word got out they were doing this, was they would do like a lottery as well, where once in a while somebody could win the lottery and get like 10 years of like these bugs in their system. Yeah. I
think the big turning point in the relationship was Amaya. She had realized that her boyfriend, the big head honcho, had taken the bugs. And she's like, do you see who this girl is?
Oh, that's
She had terminal cancer. She was next on the list to get it, and you took it instead of giving it to the next. Because they had a list of cancer patients of who was to get it next, because, again, limited supply. Yeah. And then here he is, perfectly healthy, taking them. And she's like, now this 18-year-old girl is dead, and she could have had 10 more years with her family.
Yeah.
That was a big rift point.
Yeah. All right, Jim, what are your thoughts on all this, man?
No, it was a really good story.
Okay.
I like the premise, and it's really well done.
I like that we get variations on some of the same themes. So we'll get stuff kind of like this, but there's always like a little twist on it, a different spin on it, a way that like it pushes in a new direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we've had some sort of scarce medical resources stories before.
Right. And and it touches on the same thing. And late stage capitalism. And,
so you mentioned that before we started. What do you mean by that?
Where the late stage capitalism, which is based a lot on scarcity.
Yeah.
So only the rich get richer, and they control the government, so their economic policies favor the rich and not everybody.
So you're talking like now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, a lot of right.
So some people would argue that is now.
Yeah.
Right.
Where everything's monopolized.
Okay.
And the corporations own the government.
Yeah. Okay.
Like corporations aren't running things, but they own the government.
But they get it done. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. And so you would argue that this is also a story that's a warning about late stage capitalism.
Yes.
Okay.
In that sense.
I could see that.
People are going to call me out on that because it's probably not a great explanation.
No, but I feel like that term late stage capitalism probably comes from like a whole bunch of academic papers. It sounds like a buzzword that some economists would have come up with.
Yes.
Yeah, I could totally see that. I got to be honest. I thought the whole story seemed plausible.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there was none of it that I was like, oh, they needed to do this to serve the story. Like, once you've got the scarce bug, once I'm willing to take that, like, mental leap of, like, yeah, this is a thing in this world, everything else about it seemed totally legit.
I kind of went with a little bit what Jeremy was talking about, kind of how politics are involved. Because in my mind, the lady was very much like, we need to help a few people, right? Don't mass produce this. And in my mind, I was like, well, keep working on it, keep getting funding, keep getting research, and then you can grow the number of people you need to help to the point where, kind of like trickle-down economics, like then it'll be spread to more and more people. Right. And then, of course, greed steps in.
Yeah.
I want more. I have other people that want it as well. So by actually it trickling down to the patients that actually need it to live, they're the last on the list. It's that whole trickle-down economic theory that doesn't exist.
So do you guys have, because when we've talked about this before, and I don't have a good answer, that's why I'm genuinely asking, I'm not like baiting you. Is there a good way to do medical stuff like this where it is not
merit-based?
Well, I'm going to say where it's not sort of you like everywhere and free. Like, so you could argue with something like EpiPens, right? Like, realistically, now that it's been invented, an EpiPen is like probably a nickel to manufacture, right? Not to sell, but to manufacture.
Right.
Or probably the same thing with a lot of the diabetes medicines are probably not, they're pennies, I bet, to do now because the technology exists, the mass manufacturing exists, it's really no big deal. But in cases where things are scarce, where there are some limitations on how much you can produce, either because it's particularly difficult to produce or because the thing needed to produce it is like a corpse flower. I don't know I've ever really gotten my head wrapped around how you should distribute those resources. Hi, this is Kolby, and you are listening to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions, but you already knew that, didn't you? If you'd like to support what we do at After Dinner Conversation, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/After Dinner Conversation. That's right, for as little as $5 a month, you can support thoughtful conversations like the one you're listening to. And as an add incentive for being a Patreon supporter, you'll get early access to new short stories and ad-free podcasts, meaning you'll never have to listen to this blurb again. At higher levels of support, you'll be able to vote on which short stories become podcast discussions. And you'll even be able to submit questions for us to discuss during these podcasts. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being the kind of person that supports thoughtful discussion. I don't know I've ever really gotten my head wrapped around how you should distribute those resources. Like, what?
Really, I would think it would be by need, even though this particular, by need in the sense that this technology cures cancer, so cancer patients should get it.
Sure,
but it also cures aging, which suddenly creates a very big financial incentive for a corporation to market it to people who don't have cancer.
Well, but here's the other thing too, right? Like, and this is why I'm really struggle with this is it cures cancer, right? But money that you would get from selling it to rich people cures the problem of it of research.
Yes.
And that's why I'm just like, so do you just be like, yeah, we're just going to keep selling Viagra because eventually it's going to help us make malaria medication? You see what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like...
So what makes this story unique is they went in it, well, at least Amara came in with pure intentions. And so I think you can meet in the middle. If they didn't get the funding, the project was dead. Mm-hmm. So that's, at the end of the game, you need funding. Funding promotes research, which keeps the ball rolling. So where do you call that split? Do you go, okay, 80% goes to, the people of need, 20% goes to the high rollers that can give you the funding? Like, you're going to have to sacrifice.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that she really was not budging on.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to keep your research going and therefore look, not nearsighted, but look farsighted of even more people that you can help in the long term with that extra funding.
Because this is the argument that pharmaceutical companies make, is they'll say, well, look, it only costs us a nickel to make diabetes medication.
But it costs this much to develop it.
Right, and it's going to cost us that much to develop the next thing.
Right. Because
it's not like this is the last sickness that exists.
Well, and here's the current problem on top of that, is a lot of medication is funded by the government. Research, private corporations doing the research, it's being funded by the government, yet the corporations are then...
they then patent the things that they get with the government money.
And they're not paying the government back, and they're not making it available in any sense that like that. So, they're getting a government benefit to do the research, but then they're not helping.
Right. So it's
not using it for the people, they're using it for profit.
So it's like socialized medicine, but like
socialized research, but capitalized
profits. Yeah.
And that, if you want to question it, look at how much the CEOs of these major pharma companies make.
Yeah.
How much have they bumped up from new research going on? Yeah. That's all you need to know. Where's the bottom line going? Like, where are their intentions going?
So would you fall in the category then that like pharmaceutical companies should be, I don't want to say government owned, but somehow government, like the way we do like power companies, where they have like a public board of directors and so that there's like a public sense of good there as opposed to
something more like that.
Yeah.
The system we have is not good from a public benefit sense.
Yeah.
Correct. And if public funding is going towards it, it should be for the public. That being said, we have wonderful researchers here because we have that.
Right.
Because why? Because you get rich off of it.
There's a strong incentive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got, I don't know where you draw that line, but I feel like anything sort of.
Jeremy, got any
That's a different
on
podcast.
This?
Yeah.
What's a different podcast?
The how to fix the medical insurance industry.
Okay. Yeah. Do you think the guy made the right choice here by like dealing with the high rollers?
In a lot of ways, yeah. He's working in the system that's defined
in the story,
right?
Yeah,
and so he doesn't seem like an evil person, even though he is the narrator.
Yeah.
So
the narrator's never evil in their mind, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. So do you think then? So the only evil thing in this whole story, then, in your mind, is the company if they really did kill her and make it look like an accident.
In the way the story is presented, right?
Yeah. The only problem I have with the whole story, and it's a minor problem, but like nobody could replicate her work ever. Like in 100 years, nobody else could figure out how to like solve this problem.
No, it's a solvable problem.
Right. If it was solvable by one person, it's not like only one person can like create calculus. Like eventually somebody else was going to invent calculus too.
Right.
But this goes, speaking of the power of this particular drug, now you have the have and the have, sorry, bringing it back to it, the have versus the have-nots. Who can afford to live a longer life, to live healthier, athletically, like you're not paying medical bills because you're never getting sick.
This was the Farewell Odysseus story we did forever ago too.
Mm-hmm.
But like once you've got that ability, then you've got like having it gives you the ability to like be hot, like so the gap gets bigger, not smaller.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that kind of rung true with me with this story as well.
Yeah. And I feel like there's a lot of not a lot, but there are other science fiction stories that deal with that specifically.
The sort of gateway technology that gives certain people like this.
Right. And the gap getting bigger because of technology and the access to technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just really wished that whole like trickle down would be true. Like, hey, this makes me feel great. Let me help others. Instead of being so central focused, which we unfortunately are as a society. Like,
all right. So I'm going to be the other side of this for just a second. So, I have money in the stock market. I buy whatever stocks the mutual fund buys. I don't really buy individual stocks. I don't buy those stocks because I want them to do good in the world. I buy those stocks because I want them to make money for me.
Yeah.
Like, in theory, what I like, if I could somehow get rid of BP and ExxonMobil and if I could pick 20 stocks to pull out of my mutual fund, my index fund, I would. But
they're good earners.
Yeah, but they're good earners, and whatever. I'm sure McDonald's is in my portfolio if I looked at my index fund, and it makes money for me. And so this is the difficulty I have, right, with this, is on the one hand, I get frustrated with corporations for being money driven. But on the other hand, I invest in companies because I want them to be money driven.
So this is the thing. We think that we are powerless when actually the people have the power. If everyone was woke to, hey, we don't like these big oil companies or this big pharma, let's invest in the good, solid companies. Those bigger companies are going to have to make a change. And so we feel like we're powerless because, we're one in however many million. But collectively, if we can all get our heads out of this greed, which we are, we can actually make a change.
So would you invest in a mutual fund? So you've got your retirement account. Would you be like, you can invest in the S&P 500 index fund and it returned 8.5% last year. Or you can invest in the S&P 500 index fund minus the 20 worst companies in the world. But it would only give you 6.5% return. Would you really invest in the 6.5% that's minus 20 crappy companies? That's a long pause.
Yeah. So I think I don't play the stock market as much as you do, but you
understand what I mean, though, right?
Yeah, but the companies that I am informed on, there's certain businesses that I don't give my business for certain political or whatever reasons, or there's
Chick-fil-A's of the world.
Perfect example. Or they do animal testing. I'm like, I'm not going to buy those products. And so I do have power over that. Yeah. And I choose to spend my money there. Yeah. Now, have I extrapolated that to do it to which mutual funds I choose? No. But I do, on some level, pick and choose.
Yeah. Jeremy, what about you? Would you get it? Would you invest in the more ethical index fund? That could even be the name of it.
I have done that.
The more ethical index fund.
There is an energy fund that's specifically energy companies, and I would not buy that one.
Really?
Nice.
Okay. So, all right. It was like an energy mix mutual fund or something?
Right.
Yeah.
Even though it was making, 30% returns at the time.
Sure.
All
right. So you would be willing to take a little bit out of your pocket.
Right.
If it
even though they may be in the other mixes that I don't know.
Right.
So I applaud that. So people listening, you don't have to be the sheeple. Jeremy is patient number one example, everyone. It's going to be okay. We can make a change.
Jerry's like, P.S. Can I borrow $20? Right? I just need money for coffee, man. But it's fair trade coffee. So it's really expensive. All right. Should we look at what our questions are? We normally are pretty good about getting to them. Let's just look. I gotta scroll down here. Give me a sec. What do we got? If you could be any vegetable, what would you be? No, that's not one of the questions.
So one thing I do want to talk about is Amira. She was very hard set. We've talked about this a little bit before, but very hard set on her ethical draw. Is there anything for either of you that is a hard, I know we need the funding for the project, but this is my heart is set on it, no budge.
Oh, I have one.
What's that?
I think people should be required to be voluntary participants in the tests that they're taking part in. Surely you've heard about these where they take a bunch of African Americans. They're like, hey, by the way, you've all got syphilis now.
Oh,
we're gonna see how to treat
voluntary participants.
Like that's one of my only ones, and so I think there are some things where if you can't find anyone to volunteer, you just don't ever get to know what that research would be.
Okay.
That would be one of them.
Right.
Okay.
But I feel like that's a pretty low bar.
Even if they're like, hey, it's going to make you millions of dollars and save you can still hard pass.
If you want to put lipstick on mice all day long, I'm cool with that.
Okay.
But I feel like if you're talking about human trials, like there's got to be a certain level of there's got to be consent, there's got to be knowing consent, there's got to be all these things. But I feel like that's the standard they could meet in like Angola. Like that's not a real high standard that I have.
Okay. Any hard stop for you? Any hard ethical draw that you're just like?
I don't know. I mean, I agree with Kolby.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna loop that phrase.
I agree with Kolby.
Yeah. I'm just gonna loop that. That's gonna be your ringtone. That's gonna be your ringtone if I can figure out how to hack your phone.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that was a little tangent. I thought that was
It's a good tangent. Do you have one? Do you have any things that would be like a hard stop on what you wouldn't do?
Informed consent individuals for research for sure. I think anything promoting, like we know the harms of like cigarettes nowadays. Like anything that is like, hey, if you like put money into those companies, I'd be like,
man, the cigarette companies have paid out so well for the last 50 years. Like they are really strong stocks.
I don't know.
I'm just saying they are. Like
read the next question.
Philip Morris makes money. Even now they still do because like people in third world countries just like suck it up. Okay, so there's one other question we haven't really gotten to, and that is it appropriate? By the way, all these stories have questions at the end of them if you didn't know that. Is it appropriate for companies and or governments to use or withhold access to medicine to encourage good behavior and improve global stability?
It's not ethical.
No, you can't withhold the COVID vaccines from Saudi Arabia or something like that?
To get them to come into line and other policies?
Get them to play ball?
No, you shouldn't. That's not ethical.
Are we
like
really...
on a scale of 1 to 10, is it like a 10 in your mind? Or is it like an 8.5?
I mean, I know they're going to do it. It's just not ethical.
I mean, what would you say if the United States or other developed countries withheld COVID vaccinations from certain dictatorships and said, if you will replace your dictator, like assuming COVID was more serious than it even is. And if it was like the equivalent of like measles or something, right?
That's a dick move.
It is a dick move. Now when I put it past like 1900s in America, like there is a time in America where we'd be like, oh, you want the measles vaccine?
Yeah.
We sure don't like that Noriega.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's the vaccine and the COVID itself is not.
Yeah, it might not be a great example. It's not
what happens elsewhere carries over to us, and so
it's not a great example.
For the good of your people here, you need to provide it to everyone.
Right. So let's go with smallpox. Would that be a better example?
No, you want to eradicate that too.
Yeah.
I think,
regardless of the country, it's in your interest to not have it in the world.
Because it's a global population at this point. If you've eradicated it here, they could still bring it over.
That's right. That's true. Bring it on a plane.
Yeah.
All right. So you're like a 10 on this one. You don't withhold medicine.
Yeah.
Ashley, you're a 10 as well.
Yeah, I feel the same.
Man, I'm feeling really ethically gray today. I wouldn't withhold it. I'm like a 7.5. But I would I would imply that I was going to withhold it. I'd be like,
do we have wiggle room here?
I'd be like, man, I swear we put that in the mail. Maybe if you, backed down from that border with the Ukraine, maybe Amazon would deliver it faster. We can give them a call and follow up. Like, I don't think I would withhold it, but I think I would definitely...
It's in the mail, but...
Right. I would use it as like a discussion point, maybe. Like, if you were a freer democracy, you could have invented this on your own. Maybe then you could give it to us. Kind of.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit shadier maybe that way. I don't know. I wouldn't withhold the smallpox. Maybe a flu. maybe a flu booster, but not the smallpox. All right. Anything else you guys wanted to talk about with this story? Did we cover everything?
I think we covered everything. It's pretty straightforward.
I feel like it is pretty straightforward. Yeah, I mean, not in a bad way, but just it's straightforward. It's another story, a well-written story about sort of scarcity and how you deal with scarce resources.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we all decided that rich people should get it. It's all about rich people. It's all about the rich people. All right. Hey, you've been listening to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. If you want to read this story, go to October 2021. You can get it on Amazon or Zinio or at your local library on Hoopla or whatever else. Or you can get the subscription through our website, afterdinnerconversation.com, where, and I don't think I mentioned this the last one, we actually have every back issue. So once you're a subscriber, you get like a year and a half's worth of issues of all of our back issues. We've got like a hidden web page. It's password protected. So yeah, $4.95, you can get this story and all of our back issues. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
If you've enjoyed listening to this, please like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. You know, the vast majority of people haven't liked and subscribed, which means maybe it shows up in your algorithm, maybe it doesn't. So don't leave that to chance. Just go ahead and hit that button, and we'd sure appreciate that. And that way we can keep doing what we're doing, and you're not left to the whims of some algorithm. Thanks.